This is magic. I need that magic.
So I've started by marking out my waist measurement, which will be my whole measurement, which was 25 inches, divided by 4 plus half an inch for the seam allowance. And then I'm measuring the length of the waist to the groin and marking that with my chalk. And now I'm measuring out my thigh, which will be my thigh measurement divided by 2 plus 2 inches so that it's not too tight. And now I'm measuring the waist to the knee to measure how much I want the flare to come out. So you can either cut the trouser leg out individually or cut 2 at a time. I've cut 1, so I'm going to transfer this one over to my fabric to create the second front leg piece. So these 2 pieces are just for the front leg. So now that you have 2 pieces of the front, it's time to create the back leg pieces. And the back will be the same, but just slightly more extended at the groin area. So I've added 2 extra inches and worked my way back into the pattern, and this will allow enough room for the behind. And this time I've cut out 2 at a time, so I don't need to transfer the pattern onto fabric. Once that's done, it's time to sew your pieces together, and at this step you'll only be sewing the front curve together. So I'm taking out all the other pins on the trouser leg, so just sewing the front curve. And once you've sewn both the front pieces and the back pieces together, you're going to place them on top of each other, and then you're going to sew the 2 front pieces to the back pieces. And I've started by pinning the inner leg pieces first, so meeting the points in the middle and working my way out. And now I'm moving on to the outer leg and pinning that. So you'll be pinning both the front pieces and the back piece together, and this will create an actual trouser leg.
Exclusive from offertovids.com.
now I'm moving on to my top. So I started with the back of the top and I've measured across for the shoulder measurement and measured from my shoulder to the waist to get the top length. And then you're going to cut these measurements into a rectangular shape and then fold over. And I wanted quite a wide neck, so I've cut out the neck and I've also cut out the armhole. And once it's done, we'll use the back piece to create the front piece. So you're going to fold your piece into a right angle triangle shape and pin it in place, and this will create the crossover for the top, so the wrap look for the top. So place your piece onto your fabric to create two of these shapes. So you're going to have two pieces that are the same shape for the front of the top. So now you'll have two pieces for the front and one piece for the back. And before we sew these together, I'm going to sew the hem of the top to create a neater edge. So I've done this by double folding approximately 1 centimeter for the hem. So folding that over twice to create the hem.
Playing on the track.
So place your pieces back on top of each other and you're going to sew the side seam and the top seam, and this is actually going to create the top. Once that's all sewn together, it's time to sew the sleeves. And what I've done, I've measured my sleeve length up to my elbow, and this will create the flare. So I've measured, we're going to cut the pieces separately. So firstly I'm measuring from the top to my elbow, and then we're going to cut this piece first. So I've placed my piece onto the fabric to create the second sleeve, and with sleeves I usually cut them one at a time because I usually do the sleeve on a fold. So I've cut the sleeve on a fold and then placed the first piece onto the second piece. So once both sleeves are cut out, it's time for the flare, and I've cut out 14 inches across and folded it in half, and you're going to create two of these. And then next fold your piece over and then you're going to cut out a diagonal triangle, and this will create the flare. And then place your piece on top of the second piece, and then you're going to transfer the same shape onto the second piece. Once you've cut out those pieces, you're going to gather your flare so that it fits the width of the sleeve. And I'm going to pin that together and then sew the gathers. Once the gathers have been sewn, I'm now pinning the flare onto the sleeve.
Playing on the track.
Once that's been sewn, you're going to fold the sleeve in half and then sew along the inner seam. sew the sleeve onto the top. So we're going to do this by sewing the sleeve and the top inside out. For the straps of the wrap top, I've cut out 2 strips, and you can do this according to how thick and how long you want it to be. There isn't any specifics in regards to this. So I've cut out 2 strips, and then I'm going to fold them in half and then sew along the seam. And then once I've sewn the seam, I've turned the fabric inside out and then just ironed it just to create a nicer flat finish. Once you've created 2 of these, you're going to attach them to your top, so attach it on both sides, so 1 on each side, and then now I'm creating the hole for the strap to go through it, and you'll only need 1 hole just on one side of the top, and it will be on the inside of the top beside the seam. So I've just cut out a small hole and then I'm going to overlock it.